Keith explained superhero landing to me, and I did it on intergalactic TV. 8.1 billion people on Earth, and I'm guessing they watched it happen, let alone at least 25 other species, untold billions, or even trillions. I was slightly mortified at the concept, but at the same time that means Cassie saw her mom do it too. Then there's Keith himself. While I know that fight had to have taken it out of him, ever since, something was off with him. I couldn't quite place it, but the smiles were too at ease for someone with a dislocated shoulder, bruised ribs, and only a day past having a full-blown panic attack, and then nearly dying. That rage when he'd threatened Ravage Teak was genuine, raw, and the smiling man felt like a put-on, an act. The problem was the game. It might well be an act, a play to further play a game. The one smile of his that had seemed genuine since the incident was when he got Ragnar and Greltha their equipment, when he'd successfully put together something, but I didn't know what it might be. I couldn't bother with investigation, though. Like it or not, neither he nor I could truly be completely honest with the cameras on, and Keith was playing an internal game, only giving out information when it was time. By Ragnar and Greltha's stories, Keith had gotten back to talking to the audience, explaining various elements of what they were doing, and leaning into his accent for Uncle Keith's survival hour. He was also doing more interviews with Annabelle, tonight including our newest members in the interviews, introducing them as his tribe mates. And the most I could do in this moment was to play along, afraid to trust men, and forced to just keep trusting him while he made his plays. What were mine? Since we'd begun, all that I had done was follow Keith, but he was injured, emotionally scarred, and having to pay attention to things I couldn't properly conceive of. There had to be something I could do, something that he couldn't do, something to stand out. What can I do? I've got strength, endurance, cooking skills, and 2 bunny people who will do whatever I say. Oh God, I'm so stupid. I'm a manager. First, I went to the location where my achievement reward had materialized, and inside it was a long saw blade with handles at either end, along with a longer, larger axe than the hatchets we'd been using. Distinctly useful, but not really in my own wheelhouse. That was fine. I went back to the fire with everyone seated.
All right, we've had dinner, and a much-needed and deserved chance to relax. We need to start working out how we operate together. First off, I know the Rothani are generally nocturnal. Humans are able to operate either way. But what about the rest of you?
Azoku answered first.
We are most active in daylight, but we do have strong eyes at night when we need to. However, we have encountered issues here. Our species does not adapt well with sudden changes in temperature. Usually, we would be able to simply make certain that our homes are even of temperature, but we have had little luck with that here, and have been unable to get proper rest since this tournament began. This is irrespective of other competitors and threats that this world presents. If this state continues, we will begin to slip mentally.
I nodded and looked to the Asu.
And what of you two?
Shin, having had some time to rest his lungs, spoke up.
Well, we're in the day 2, but our vision is not good in the dark. Not if we want to be quick. Mostly our fur keeps us warm enough, but I'm afraid we're not meat eaters, so we need to find more stuff to eat.
Keith said nothing, merely letting me have the floor. He had to trust me as much as I had to trust him.
All right, here is the plan for our tribe. First and foremost, you and Chethuxil will be on hunting detail.
Chethuxil nodded immediately, but Azoku gave me a discerning gaze.
And why should I listen to one who does not hunt, and one who is now made cripple?
Keith exchanged a questioning look, and it was Keith who responded.
Well, the shoulder thing sucks, but I'll be able to start physical therapy in a few days, and then it's just a matter of weeks before I'm back to rights, I reckon. I'm hardly a cripple.
Every alien around the fire turned to regard us, first Keith making the statement, then myself, looking for confirmation of whether that was true or false. It was Greltha who spoke first.
That cannot be correct.
It was my turn.
Do none of your species heal like us? Some of our best athletes and fighters have come back from worse injuries than Keith's. It takes time and medical attention, but it's not abnormal for us.
Keith, meanwhile, was taking half his shirt off, then pressed a button to take down the top half of his bodysuit. There was pain involved, but he did it. and I saw something I hadn't seen before. The scar of the bullet wound just below his right collarbone.
I mean, y'all, this is from before I ever got here, and it nicked my right lung. Any of y'all think I slowed down from that? From what y'all know of me on this here planet?
Dukatha moved in close.
That should kill you. It would kill any Asu.
Azoku regarded it as well.
While a strong Vergal might survive such a wound, they would never again serve as a warrior.
Ragnar shook his head as well.
This may be unique to your species. That is a bit scary. I also have a question about the fight. I have not seen you display such strength since the fight. I know you are injured, but are humans really so strong? Even with our strength as Rothani, we were at the mercy of that creature, and yet you were able to ignore much pain.
Keith turning the suit piece back on.
Well, I mean, once the adrenaline hits...
Shin's ears perked.
What's adrenaline?
That wasn't the translator. It was Shin mimicking human speech at something that had no translation in his own language. We were both agape, and then Keith started laughing, then hissed, a hand going to his ribs.
Oh shit, y'all, I hadn't considered that. Y'all don't know what adrenaline is. I mean, it makes sense. Not every species on Earth has an adrenal gland. Basically, it's a chemical that our bodies naturally produce, and it's introduced into our blood, giving us extra energy and whatnot. With it, we can get stronger, tougher, our pain tolerance goes up, and even get faster and get higher endurance. Heck, it was the adrenaline crash after I stopped moving that made me pass out. Val has it too, when she runs and stuff.
Finally, the holographic screen popped up between us, and there was Ravajtik, but without any of the backgrounds for the games, and our privacy modes were all engaged.
Survivor Keith, did I hear your statement correctly? And is this a special trait in certain humans?
And there was that wolf-like smile again.
Huh. Looks like somebody here didn't do their homework proper after all. Almost all humans produce adrenaline naturally. Had a buddy during an attack who got shot worse than I did. He just ran through, firing till he was out of ammo, then just fucking clubbed the guy to death. I mean, he nearly died of blood loss. But in the moment, we kinda refer to it as the superhero phase. Your garden variety humans using, at most, 10% of their strength in a given moment. Once it hits though, yeah, we get up to some shit. You got access to our internet? Look up Mother Lifts Car Off Baby and get back to me. Oh, and top 10 alien invasion movies of all time.
The screen vanished and privacy mode dropped.
Now Val was working on something?
I snapped back to what we'd been discussing.
Right. The Vergal are hunters, so they work as the tribe's hunters. Meanwhile, the Rothani have demonstrated the ability to be solid builders, and will be depending on you to work during the nights. That leaves the Asu, and I have an important task for you both. I need you both to scout.
Dukatha looked downfallen.
So they get to build stuff and hunt, and we're just hopping around?
I smiled.
Don't take it hard. It's important. This is an alien world, and there may be more of that dire cougar out there, as well as other things. As Keith has imparted to me, information is key. We need to learn the land, especially where the other species are, any natural resources. Aside from that, we need to know any skills we all have. We've sort of gotten a refresher on human biology right now, but Keith's a skilled medic and survivalist, so he'll be here in case anything happens, and doing what he can while he heals and nothing else. Myself, I can switch between jobs, so I'll be helping out with each of you, doing gathering, helping us stay on target, as well as venturing out to find other species. The weather's been cooperative so far, but sooner or later, that changes.
There was some more grumbling from Azoku, but with everyone else on board, it seemed we had a strategy moving forward. Ragnar and Greltha excused themselves first, so Greltha could get in a nap before commencing night work. The Vergal went with them, and we handed them off the Afghans we'd received earlier to help insulate them in the cold of the night. The Asu waited until I told them to go to sleep, and they found a spot of their own. That left me and Keith by ourselves for a bit, and I hit privacy mode.
How's the shoulder and ribs?
I mean, it hurts, but that's a good sign, medically speaking. If it weren't, that would point toward nerve damage. As to pain management, it looks like the oil in the bark of those Evereds is like birch bark, so I'm gonna try the oil of it topically, to test if it's got the same pain relief properties. I mean, I've been taking stuff from my bag, but that's all the medical supplies we've got, and I don't want to burn through it if I don't have to. and I'd rather do the experiments while I still got supplies to deal with it if it goes wrong.
He replied, letting the tiredness he was feeling show. I took one long breath and left off the rest of my questions for the night.
All right, we should both get sleep. We've got a lot to do tomorrow.
Things both sped up and slowed down from there. Keith wasn't sleeping well, sometimes at all, and several times awoke nearly screaming and crying from sleep. It was disconcerting, but he kept waving off the conversation, and it was clear I wasn't going to get him to budge. I'd read somewhere that one of the issues of PTSD was the inability to talk about the thing that caused it. He was sharp enough, but at the same time, something was tearing at him, and the forced stoppage had done something to him. I literally watched him breathe and force the tears to stop, and Greltha commented she had seen it too. She was worried, but there simply wasn't time to address it in the moment. Azoku was becoming a bit more of an issue. He and his son were proficient hunters, but he chafed at having to obey the orders of others, and it became clear that he expected to be in a position of power. Chathuxil, meanwhile, seemed only too happy to impress us all, proudly displaying his kills. Something would need to be done, but whatever he was up to, he seemed to be waiting on something from Keith. Aside from scouting, the Asu had failed to mention a skill of theirs, thumping. They could actually communicate by slapping their large feet on the ground. It wasn't exactly a complicated speech, but it was another way of relaying information to one another. This gave us a massive advantage in not only knowledge of the land, but at least some sort of rapid communication system. Most of the time, Shin would go out while Dukatha would stay nearer to camp and help where she could. One of those ways was in retrieving things for Keith, so he didn't need to move as much, as well as it turned out that the Asu were natural diggers. She began bringing up stones, which Keith told her how to place to make a primitive kiln, then had her bring up clay from the river. This was put into a mold for a bit that Keith had whittled out, and then bricks were steadily being fired. They weren't exactly top quality, but it was still moving toward a goal, to make a better kiln. Shin, meanwhile, found more clay deposits downstream, while upstream he began bringing in bits of iron from the river, identifying the metal by scent. Ragnar and Greltha were moving forward with building and were making tremendous strides. They would wake up around mid-afternoon and get to work on bringing in lumber, while at night they would render them into shape for use, including stripping bark to make rope and making more wood planks. They even were grinding down what were essentially primitive nails, and then in the mornings, before going to sleep, they would do work on the frame for the decks that were discussed for the build. They even used rendered fat over a smoothed plank of wood, turning it into what was essentially a dry erase board, so Keith could better draw out plans for them. Each new shelter seemed to be getting built lower along the bluff, and with that, deeper posts. A rudimentary staircase had been built up as well, and the switchback was now covered with wood shavings, giving better traction, and railed, not that it would stop any serious amount of weight, but it was still better than nothing. For myself, I continued gathering using the Flora book and worked as the hub for everyone else for information. In the 3 days since the Asu and Vergal had joined us, we had gotten amazing work done, and nowhere was that more glaring than in the glade. Ragnar and Greltha had essentially made a rock plow and were using it nightly when they had time to turn as much soil as they could. Then Dukatha and Shin would come through with seeds and transplants. It brought up a new issue, irrigation. A point of personal enjoyment, though, was the soap that Keith had made finally set, and I could get properly clean for the first time since this started. I was a little despondent about the state of my body hair until I realized that Keith, aside from a goatee coming in, was otherwise clean-shaven every day. Apparently he had been using his knife as a razor, and after a little practice, I got the knack down for myself. I know it's vain, and I can hear the voices of 1,000 angry women, but I'd been shaving my legs for meets since my leg hair started growing in, like most serious track runners, and it was just an ingrained habit by this point. Then, one morning, something shifted. Shin had scented another species, and thumped a warning back to Dukatha that they were approaching the bluff. Dukatha looked at me.
What do we do?
I considered,
Well, we're going to try and talk to them. We need all of us, not just a bunch of us, but let's not be silly about it. Have Shin retrieve the Vergal, while I go down to meet with our potential tribe mates.
I left out the part that could just as easily be here to kill us, but I'd gotten in trouble a lot when I was younger for saying the quiet parts out loud and learned from it. I went down our newly refurbished switchback, and I saw them entering the glade where they halted. If I remembered correctly from the clips we'd seen, they were called trills, and Keith had found something funny in the name that I didn't get. These were the first truly alien-looking creatures I'd seen. They were tall, reedy people, with no obvious gender between them. Their skin was hunter green, with large, yellow, ovoid eyes. I assumed they were keeping their mouths shut until I got close enough to realize they had neither noses, mouths, or ears in the typical sense. There did seem to be some sort of antennae that accomplished roughly the same goal. How do they communicate, though?
We are telepathic. We speak with our minds, Valerie.
I jumped and halted my approach. The voices, speaking in complete sync, came from everywhere and nowhere at the same time. Then you can hear my thoughts now? They stood there still, unmoving, unblinking.
We can, but your mind is cluttered. This is not a slight, but a statement that your species has not received conditioning to focus your minds. Your thoughts and feelings are scattered, but be not afraid. We come in peace. Take us to your leader.
I may not know movies well, but even I knew that line, and I laughed unintentionally. They demonstrated their hands were empty as they continued to approach, and I continued to walk toward them.
Sorry, but verbal speech works better for me. Does it help with your telepathy?
Yes, as you speak, your mind focuses on the sounds you make. We wish to join you.
Unlike the other species, these trills wore bodysuits akin to what Keith and I had on, which was likely understandable, as the others each had something like fur or scales to help them regulate temperature, and the Vergal's issue was with temperature regularity, it seemed, not the exact temperature itself. The Rothani were shedding their winter coats, as were the Asu. This still left some questions, though.
What sort of food do trills eat? And what are your names?
Our names have no vocal translation. I got the feeling and mental image that I was seated before a warm hearth in the depth of winter. And I felt and saw the image of coming home after a long time away. Our sustenance is no more than sun and water. We do not sleep, as your mind would put it. Though we do have states of dormancy, we are never unconscious.
They really were our first true aliens, but oddly, the others had likely caused me to go along with this more. They seemed peaceful enough, and could never be a contest for food within the tribe. Their telepathy also meant that they had a form of communication that could not be observed. I brought them back with me to the bluff, and I could see reactions out of the others as they reached out mentally to reassure them. Azoku and Chaltuxel seemed to bristle for a moment, but calmed back down. Rognar and Greltha remained cool, and the Asu were instantly curious. What none expected was the reaction when they touched Keith's mind. Both of them suddenly reeled back, clutching at their heads. Even their eyes shifted, and Keith froze.
What happened?
His mind, he is painful. His mind is maimed. We were not prepared for the feelings, the memories. How? How does he function like this?
I turned to Keith.
Step back! They're telepathic!
He moved back immediately and sat cross-legged on the ground, where he closed his eyes and began to focus purely on his own breathing. I felt horrible about the instruction, but I figured distance might help. Thankfully, Keith took it in stride and apparently was meditating on a rock. The trills calmed as he quieted his mind, but how would we be able to have them operate around Keith?
Hey everyone, hope you loved the video. Don't forget to give it a thumbs up and hit subscribe for more awesome sci-fi content. You can also support us by hitting the thanks button or becoming a channel member. Your generosity helps us bring you more stellar stories. Every bit counts. Thanks a bunch.